Welcome back to the Disconnected podcast. I'm your host, Jessica, and today I'm here with Stephen. Welcome to the podcast, Stephen.
Thank you for welcoming me in.
Absolutely. Do you think that having friendships and being social in general is an important aspect of human life?
Yeah, I would agree. So I do think that having friendship is an important aspect of life, just because I feel like as human beings, it's in our nature to interact with other people and interact with other living things in general. And I don't think we're meant to live alone or interact with ourselves only. And I feel like it's only in our nature to interact with other people. And that's just how we are in our nature. And that's the only way we can live as human beings. So I do feel like it is important to form relationships and things of that nature, just because it's in our nature to do so.
How did you meet your closest friends?
When I think of my closest friends, I've probably met them in the place I spent the most time. So I would say school is where I met most. I can say all my closest friends I've met in school, just because you spend 5 days a week there, 8 hours out of the day you spend there. So that's typically where I tend to meet most of my closest friends and have met most of my closest friends.
Have you ever maintained long distance relationships or friendships? And how did you stay connected with the other people?
I have a couple of long distance friendships right now. I was in a long distance relationship as well, so I understand how to maintain both, or what it's like to maintain both. I think the biggest thing with that is always staying connected with the person, making sure you're always in some kind of contact. Obviously, contact physically is limited, but definitely I have had those kind of relationships and they can be difficult.
Do you think that technology and like texting or calling helps you maintain those relationships?
Oh, definitely. If it wasn't for technology, I don't think those relationships would be sustainable. Honestly, it'd be a lot harder to do so. The only way I feel like maintaining those long distance relationships would be feasible is if you had physical interaction with that person prior to the long distance relationship. But if you guys started off long distance, then I feel like it almost seems very hard and taxing to even try to keep up that kind of relationship, being so far away and not being able to form the kind of connection that you really want to with that person.
So when you say connection, what do you mean? Like, what's the difference? What makes those long distance relationships so hard to start when you're long distance?
I think it's all the cues that you miss when you're up close with the person. So like body language, the way you can see someone interact, a lot of cues or body language that you miss that you would see up close to the person that you'll miss long distance, even though now we have video calls and stuff like that. But definitely with texting and calling, there's a lot of cues that you don't really get to see and things that you miss. And it leaves a lot of room for misinterpretation as well, especially with texting. Something you can say in a text and something you can say in person may sound completely different to a person. So that's why I feel like you can form a connection, but you're not as confident in the things you're saying or doing when you're trying to form a connection, just because you're not confident if whether or not you truly understand where the person is coming from, or does the person truly understand where you're coming from as well.
Yeah. Do you think it's hard to get a whole scope and view of the person's personality if you're only communicating over technology?
I do think so. As technology is progressing, we're able to get a good grasp of some things. And I feel like the gap is slowly closing, but I do feel like there are some aspects in forming a connection with someone that you can't really get otherwise unless you meet with them in person.
Do you think it's difficult to build trust with a person over technology or online?
Difficult, yes. Impossible, no. I do think it's difficult to trust somebody. You would like to let your guard down, and it's hard to even do so if you've never even physically even met with the person. And I say it's not impossible because over time, you may be able to close that gap and actually be able to trust a person. You're likely to trust someone a lot easier having met them in person, talked to them in person, than you are over technology, someone who's far away that you're not very sure. You're less skeptical about that person as you would be as opposed to just seeing them in person. It would be a lot easier for you to trust them and get to know them better just because there's something comforting about having that person right there in front of you while you're talking to them.
We'll segue now into talking about religion and religious beliefs. So, can you tell me about your religious beliefs, kind of a summary of what you believe?
Okay, yeah, I summed that up pretty quickly for you. So I am Catholic, so I only believe in one God, and I accept that Jesus Christ is my only Savior. Sum it up simple and easy for you.
Cool. Simple and easy is helpful. So, why do you believe what you do? In other words, what experience or experiences have led you to these beliefs?
Initially, to be completely honest, I was born into it. So that was what initially got me into this belief. But further analysis and my own experiences have kept me believing and stay committed to my religion as well. Just because I've stayed committed to this religion and to my beliefs, I've been able to basically be rewarded for doing so in a way. I feel like the times when I did stay strict to my beliefs and continue to believe in what I believe in, I was rewarded in doing so. And I can almost credit to my belief for how far I've gotten in life as well.
Yeah. So, you said you started out, you were born into these beliefs. Does your family or did your family really influence your beliefs?
Oh, definitely. Mom, for certain, she is probably the biggest reason why I have the beliefs that I do because we definitely believe in the same things. Outside of my family, they may have different. They definitely are Christians as well, but they fall into different denominations, and that's just in general. We all believe in God, and so that's what mainly matters to me. But definitely, my family has played the biggest influence for me, and so that's the main reason why I've been able to stick with my beliefs thus far, is because I have a system around me that allows me to continue my beliefs.
Is one of the goals of your religion to create a relationship with God?
Yes, I wouldn't even say it's a goal. It's almost a requirement that you should maintain a relationship with God for sure. Mhm.
Is your relationship with God similar to those you have with other people, or is there something about it that's fundamentally different?
I would say it's I think it's both. In some aspects, I can see it being similar, and others we'll just say for say we'll say it's different. I only say that it's different because basically how I view God is completely different than how I view people I'm trying to form a connection with. In the same way you would, the same kind of conversations or the same way you would talk to your mother isn't the same way you would talk to your friend. You know, there's a different tone and a different topics that you take with those people. Just like when I'm forming a connection with God, I feel like it's more so that I'm doing the talking. I'm the one expressing myself to God as opposed to us going back and forth per se, which we do. But I feel like it's me more so trying to let him know my feelings and trying to express myself, letting him know what I'm fearful of and not necessarily what he might be fearful of because he didn't have any fears or anything like that. But when I'm forming connections with friends, it's different because I feel like it's more mutual. There's a back and forth that's going on here that I'm expressing myself to them and they're expressing themselves to me. So it seems more mutual and different in that sense. That it's not as one sided as it seems.
So, how do you connect with God in that way? If you said it's not the same back and forth, how do you build that relationship if you're mostly expressing yourself to Him, but then you don't always get that immediate feedback from Him?
I would say prayer and going to church are the two main ways. I would say prayer predominantly because I don't go to church every day, but prayer for sure is something I do every time I get a chance when I wake up, before I eat, especially for things I'm grateful of. I try to slip in a prayer before I even take part in those activities or events. So definitely through prayer, I feel like that's how I form my main connection with God is how I express myself to him. And obviously, whenever he gets back to me, he might get back to me in the form of some type of blessing. And, you know, blessings can come in a multitude of shapes and forms. So I never know when those blessings arrive, but when they do arrive, I know where they came from and why they came.
So, you mentioned prayer, but are there other religious practices or objects such as statues or religious texts or books that help you feel more connected to God?
The Bible, for one, reading different scriptures is almost like it's almost like a guide. So you can always look or reference the Bible for things, or even situations in your life, and look for scriptures or Bible verses that pertain to you and may help comfort you in your time of need, depending on the situation that you're in. Because there are plenty of other believers besides myself, or past believers besides myself, that kind of paved the way for this religion as well. And so being able to go and look back at some of the things that they were saying, some of the captivating, inspiring things that you've heard them say, it kind of is comforting to you and does help you form a better connection because you have some words that you're actually able to take in and realize the good in what you're believing in. And along with that, I could also say taking in the blood and the body of Jesus Christ as well is one thing we do every week as a Catholic. I speak for every other religion, but taking in the body and blood of Christ, also cleansing our sins, is another way you feel more connected with God because you're taking away your sins and purifying your body.
So, what makes God seem real to you?
Mm. There's a lot. It's almost unexplainable how he feels real to you because there's so many intangibles that go on that you may not necessarily see, but it's a special feeling that you get that you almost can't explain to somebody. Almost like when you know someone's the right person for you. You can't explain to somebody, but you just have this feeling about what you're doing is right and what you're believing in is also true as well. And so what makes God feel real to me is definitely the blessings I receive. Whenever I feel like I devote myself to something and I don't give up and I continue to strive and I continue to persevere and I continue to maintain prayer with him, hoping that I will be able to accomplish my goals or my dreams, and I end up doing so, I can attribute that to him. And there are times in my life where I felt like I didn't maintain my relationship with God. I continued to pray. And there are times I felt like I was not going to make it out of this situation like I would hope. Somehow it almost feels impossible. Some of the situations I came out of and somehow managed to, you know, do good for myself. And I can only attribute that to God. It almost feels virtually impossible for some of the things I had been through, some of the situations I had. To me, it felt like there was no way out of it. And somehow there was a way, and somehow I got out of it. And the one thing I did always in that situation was pray. And I never let my prayer falter. And I always maintained that connection with God. And I felt like that is one way I do believe he is real. It's just through my life experiences.
Yeah, so in a way, it's those internal cues or feelings, and then they are confirmed by external events.
Yes.
Okay.
Mhm.
Has your religion and your faith shaped the way that you interact with other people?
Definitely. I think when I interact with people, I keep my religion in mind, making sure I don't harm my neighbor or try to lie or deceive any of my friends, anything like that. There are little things I do think of when I'm forming relationships with people because these are things I want to avoid when forming relationships. Just because, one, I don't want to come off as that kind of person to the friendship I'm trying to form. And two, I don't want to displease God by doing any of those things as well. So I want to maintain my relationship with God and stay true to him while also staying true to the person I'm trying to form a relationship with. So some things in my religion does coincide with forming good relationships and having good habits when connecting with people.
Do you think that forming long distance relationships in some ways parallels forming relationships with God or a relationship with God?
I think it does. Let me see how I can explain this. I would say so because in a way you are using some kind of, instead of physically talking to somebody, you're using some kind of medium to connect with the person. Prayer is how we connect with God. Maybe telephones, computers, how we connect with someone in long distance. There's some medium going on there that's giving the information to the person for you. But in other regards, I feel like it is similar because there is limited contact. You don't really get to, not like we ever get to see God anyways right now, but there is limited contact between you and the person you're connecting with. So you may be skeptical at times whenever you're talking with the person just because you're forming a long distance relationship. And like I said earlier, it's easier to form a connection when you're physically with the person. I can almost argue the same thing with people who have never physically seen God, and to them, that may be one reason for skepticism because they've never physically seen him. In the same way, you can kind of say when you're forming long distance relationships and you haven't really physically seen them. But in a way, just like I also mentioned, connecting with the person all the time, constantly praying to God, and that those things help forming connections. Always making sure you're texting or calling that person, letting them know that you are there for them. And so always forming and maintaining that connection is important for those long distance relationships, just like I believe it is when forming a relationship with God.
Yeah, definitely. Do you have any other things, any other thoughts that you would like to add to this whole conversation?
Mm, I think I could, but I don't think it's not coming to me right now.
That's okay. Yeah. Thank you for coming on
uh,
the podcast. It's been a really good conversation. So thank you.
no problem. Anytime I can come help or be of assistance, I would gladly do so. Thank you for having me for sure. Thank you.